Alright everyone, we start off today talking about the trucker convoys in Canada. They're still going strong, tens of thousands of people in Ottawa. Some of the smaller groups have splintered off and have gone away, like they were at the bridge there between Detroit and Windsor, which is responsible for almost a third of US-Canadian trade. Big closure there. The bridge had been overrun by truckers. They decided to leave. Ottawa, though, is still under occupation, as the Trudeau administration continues to call it, invoking the concept of an insurrection. It's extremism. Oh, it's terrible and violent, and this is a small minority that has unacceptable views. This is not legitimate discussion. You should just do what you're fucking told. Justin Trudeau effectively sounds like George W. Bush. That's the only thing that I can draw as a comparison. He sounds like George W. Bush, and apparently a lot of Canadians actually support this. This is because this is pig in a poke politics. This is the I sold you authoritarianism under the blanket shield of the concept of pragmatism, save the children, fear, 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 and emergency that government does all the time because you nitwits actually will go along with it. Meanwhile, I see even far leftists. You have to give fucking Vaush of all people, no fan of mine, by the way, coming out and questioning this particular move because Trudeau has now invoked the Emergencies Act there. To be clear, multiple ministers of the provinces, this is the way their Commonwealth system of government works, don't agree with this. They pointed out he has to, I believe, formally not request it, but inform them and get their opinions. It's sort of like a little bit of a pompous circumstance thing, a remnant of the era of kings and stuff. So Trudeau had to write to, or a letter, I believe, actually, to these ministers of the different provinces, and about half of them said that it was unacceptable to use the Emergency Powers Act because what it pertains to, and it was used during like World War II and shit, is when there's an existential threat to Canada itself. So if you think Canadian sovereignty itself is going to devolve because the truckers decide to honk in the streets in Ottawa, Justin Trudeau's move makes sense. I would hazard a guess that it doesn't. It doesn't make much sense. I don't think that's a hostile overthrow. I think that they are definitely stretching the term insurrection to the very goddamn possible limit. More and more people, I think, are seeing through Trudeau's shtick. I wouldn't be surprised if this results in severe political repercussions. The police chief of Ottawa can smell the what's cooking. He decided to resign. Yeah, I want to be police chief of Ottawa when the troops are going to come in and start fighting with a bunch of truckers and vandalizing their trucks. And you've got fucking TD Bank, by the way, robbing millions of dollars, arguably, from people. Looking at the reverse charges and calling in the government explicitly to sort things out, although it sounds like in some cases they don't really have much of a choice. Remember that they are Canadian. A little bit more of a problem than with Give, Send, Go or Subscribe Star or something like that. Trudeau is effectively declaring war on his own country. He's legitimizing the use of military intervention to try to clear out some truckers. Now, I thought this was a tiny fringe minority of people a few weeks ago. Why do you have to call in the military and invoke the Emergency Powers Act, converting effectively Canada into a militarized culture temporarily for a small issue of no real meaning? It's just some yobs, they said. It's just some rednecks out there with stupidity in their minds and nothing else. Just a bunch of goddamn MAGA-esque rednecks. They don't speak for a considerable number of Canadians. Well, seems they have enough support to lock down your capital. Trudeau seems to think that that's an existential crisis of sovereignty. In the absence of a foreign invasion, that would be the only argument under which the Emergency Powers Act would actually be legitimate. Hence why half of your provincial ministers don't want it to actually go into effect. Now, I don't think they can stop it. They can effectively prevent people from cooperating with the federal forces. Yeah, it's only all of Quebec and New Brunswick, and I think 4 others: Alberta, Saskatchewan, Manitoba. I can't remember the 6th one, so it's half the country's land area, effectively. Yeah, it's not going to be a problem across that vast an area to chase around a bunch of truckers who can always take to the roads and recongeal in another location faster than the military can track them. Just to be clear, they still have an advantage. Also, under certain circumstances, especially if you're siphoning the gas, as some idiot commentators have said you should do, you ain't moving those trucks because the tow trucking services, number one, refuse. I don't think the Emergency Powers Act allows for the nationalization of tow truck drivers, but we'll see. It would be interesting if that happens. It's like the fucking day of the rake. In some cases, you would have to refuel the vehicles or tamper with the brake systems. In order to get rid of them, I guess the military will have to use cranes and bulldozers in some cases. Oh, that's right, they're in urban settings. You're not going to be able to maneuver a crane into the area either. The truckers have effectively won already. The entire world's attention is on them. It's spawning a planned State of the Union, I believe, DC trucker protest. They're going to try to overwhelm DC. Only a few thousand people have to attend such a thing in order to cause mayhem. To be clear, on the Beltway, a few thousand truckers could probably lock down half of the trade and travel in the DC area. You don't need 50,000, not by a long shot. It spawned protests similarly even here in the Netherlands. This is now a worldwide Occupy-esque phenomenon, which is why they're cracking down so quickly. This is why they're using severe coronitarianism to try to censor online discussion about these things, because they're afraid, because it's an actual grassroots movement. You can disagree with it. You can say that it's based on a hate of science. It's based on a hate of grandma. You want kids to die. But that being said, it's a popular uprising. It is a grassroots movement as opposed to an astroturfed one, which is typically what we see from the far left. There's a reason why the politicians will take a knee for the tiny, screaming, and very violent minority of BLM or Antifa, but here they act like the sky is crashing down. So the truckers are, I guess, they're not going anywhere. Trudeau can impotently wag his finger and talk about extremism, but it seems like he's losing the will of more and more of the public. Again, there are people that are definitely in line with Trudeau politically who are calling him out for this, including large segments of the Canadian political system, including half the provincial ministers. It didn't seem to go over too well. I guess you've got the Northwest Territories have no problem with what you're doing. Nunavut has no problem with it. The Nova Scotians are not particularly concerned about you using the Emergency Powers Act. What a coalition. British Columbia, all the weed dealers. The military's not coming for the weed plants. We don't give a shit. No, they're not going for our organic kale farms, which we supply to the smoothie vendors. Well, we've got ours. Screw you over in Manitoba. What a funny thing. It's hilarious. And this is so typically Canadian, too. When you get that banter about the truckers or about the government response, it's like basically soaked in Timbit oil. It's hilarious. I'm having a good time watching this. I like the fact that the truckers have effectively flummoxed the entire government of Canada with a population considerably less of that of just the main capital, which they're still occupying. Yeah, hashtag Occupy. I thought that was a good thing, leftoid politicians. You used to say so. That's about all. Peace out.